Don't touch me. Claire's voice, sharp and brittle, shattered the opulent silence of the penthouse, the sound hanging in the air like shards of splintered glass. Ethan, caught mid-reach, froze. His hand, inches from her wrist, trembled almost imperceptibly. His shirt, carelessly unbuttoned, revealed a sliver of tan skin. His jaw was rigid, clenched against the emotions warring within him. His eyes, dark pools reflecting the city lights below, held a desperate plea, a flicker of guilt warring with something akin to raw, naked longing. Claire, just listen. His voice was a low rasp, barely audible above the hum of the building. Listen? She spat, the word laced with venom. Listen? You vanish for 2 months, leaving me to pick up the pieces of whatever the hell that was, and now you want me to listen? Her voice trembled, threatening to crack, but her anger, honed by weeks of hurt and confusion, held firm. She'd come here seeking closure, a definitive end to the torment. She hadn't come for carefully crafted excuses or hollow apologies. The panorama of the city, spread out behind him like a glittering tapestry, was reflected in the floor-to-ceiling windows, turning the penthouse into a theatrical stage, highlighting the drama unfolding. 2 broken hearts, 1 shattered promise, and a chasm of unspoken words stretched between them, wider and deeper than the city itself. Ethan ran a hand roughly through his already disheveled hair, the familiar gesture betraying the turmoil churning beneath his carefully cultivated calm. I made a mistake, Claire. A colossal one. I thought leaving would protect you. Protect me? She interrupted, her laugh bitter and devoid of humor. Protect me from what? From the monsters under my bed? From me? He took a tentative step closer, his movements slow and deliberate, as if approaching a wounded animal. From the mess I was becoming, from the consequences of my choices. From what your brother would do if he ever found out. Her chest rose and fell unevenly, the silk of her dress clinging to her trembling form. You think I cared about that? About Ryan's disapproval? You should have, he said quietly, the weight of his actions pressing down on him. For a long moment, silence reigned, broken only by the distant hum of the city, a constant, unwavering pulse beneath their strained exchange. Claire's eyes were suddenly glossy, shimmering with unshed tears. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was barely a whisper, a fragile thing easily broken. I loved you, Ethan. I believed in you. His throat tightened, a lump forming that threatened to choke him. And I still don't. Say it? She cut in, shaking her head vehemently, as if trying to dislodge the words before they could escape. Don't you dare say it. She turned abruptly, her hand reaching for the cold metal of the door handle, desperate to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the penthouse. But his voice, low and laced with a dangerous undercurrent, stopped her cold. He knows. Her hand froze midair. Slowly, almost reluctantly, she turned back to face him, her eyes wide with apprehension. What did you say? Ethan's eyes locked with hers, the unspoken words hanging heavy between them. Ryan. He knows about us, Claire. Her heart plummeted, a sickening lurch that left her breathless. What? What did you do, Ethan? What did you say? I didn't tell him, Ethan said quickly, his voice laced with urgency. He found out on his own. I swear. She took a hesitant step forward, her voice cracking with a mixture of fear and disbelief. And you didn't think to warn me? After all this time, after everything? I tried, Claire. Believe me, I tried. You blocked my calls. You changed your number. You vanished, she screamed, the dam finally breaking. You disappeared without a word. You made me think I meant absolutely nothing to you, that I was some fleeting amusement. He didn't reply, the silence stretching between them, thick and suffocating, louder than any shouting match. Claire's voice softened, the anger slowly draining away, leaving behind a raw, aching vulnerability. Why are you doing this to me again, Ethan? Why now? After all this time, why resurface and dredge all of this up? Because I can't stop thinking about you, he said simply, the words stripped bare of any pretense. Because no matter how much I try to forget, I see you in every damn thing. Every song, every night, every. She cut him off with a tearful, disbelieving laugh. You're unbelievable, Ethan. Absolutely unbelievable. You think that makes it okay? That a few pretty words can erase 2 months of silence? Of nothing? No, he said, his voice low and raw with emotion. But it's the truth, Claire. It's the only truth I have left to offer. Claire exhaled shakily, her anger slowly dissipating, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion. You want truth? Fine. Here's some truth for you. I hate you for leaving me. I hate that you made me fall for you when you knew it was wrong. I hate that I still. She stopped abruptly, her voice catching in her throat. He stepped closer, the proximity making her skin prickle with a mixture of fear and longing. That you still what, Claire? Don't leave me hanging. Say it. Her silence, the turmoil etched on her face, told him everything he needed to know. His voice softened, breaking the heavy tension that hung in the air. Say it, Claire. Please. Don't make me, she whispered, her voice barely audible. He moved until there was barely an inch between them, his gaze locked on hers, willing her to speak. Say it, Claire. Please. I still love you, she said, the words a barely audible confession, torn from the depths of her soul. And then, fueled by a sudden surge of self-loathing, she shoved him back, fury warring with the undeniable truth she had just confessed. God, I hate that I do. He didn't move, didn't flinch, just looked at her with that same maddening calm that both infuriated and captivated her. You think I don't feel the same, Claire? You think I haven't been living in hell these past 2 months? You don't, she said, her voice laced with conviction. You wouldn't have walked away if you did. You wouldn't have left me to wonder, to doubt, to... His hands clenched at his sides, the knuckles white against his skin. You think I wanted to? Your brother would have destroyed me, Claire. Financially, socially, every way possible. He would have made sure I never worked again. You're a millionaire, Ethan. Several times over. You don't get destroyed. You're invincible. He laughed bitterly, a harsh, grating sound. You think money protects me from guilt, from regret? You think it can buy me a clear conscience or erase the memories of what we had? For a fleeting moment, the carefully constructed walls between them cracked, revealing the raw, vulnerable man beneath the polished exterior. He looked human, not the charming, carefree player everyone had warned her about, but a man cornered by his own choices, haunted by his past. Claire turned away, unable to bear the intensity of his gaze, desperately trying to hide the tears she had sworn she wouldn't let fall. You hurt me more than anyone ever has, Ethan. More than I ever thought possible. I know, he said quietly, the words laced with genuine remorse. And I'd give anything to undo that night, to go back and make a different decision. Then why call me? Why drag me back into this mess? Because I saw your name in the news. It mentioned your art show. You looked happy, Claire. And it scared the hell out of me. She blinked, momentarily taken aback. Scared you? That I was finally... over you? Claire shook her head in disbelief, a hollow laugh escaping her lips. So this is about you again, isn't it? It always is. He didn't deny it, the admission hanging heavy in the air. God, you're selfish, Ethan, she whispered, the words laced with bitterness. You ruined me, you know that? You ripped me apart piece by piece. Disappear, then come back because you can't stand not being the center of my world. Because you can't stand the thought of me moving on. Maybe, he admitted, his voice barely audible. But I'm here now, Claire, and I'm not going anywhere unless you ask me to. And I wish you weren't, she said, her voice trembling. She turned again towards the door, desperate to escape the emotional minefield she found herself in. He grabbed her wrist, his touch gentle, but firm enough to stop her. Let me explain, Claire. Please. Just let me explain. Let me go, please, she pleaded, her voice cracking with suppressed emotion. You don't get to beg now, Ethan. You forfeited that right a long time ago. She pulled her wrist free, the sudden movement echoing in the tense silence of the room, and walked out, not daring to look back. The door slammed shut behind her, the sound reverberating through the penthouse, a final, definitive punctuation mark on their fractured encounter. Ethan stood still, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the empty space where she had just been. He whispered to the silent, empty room, his voice laced with bitterness. "Happy now, Ryan? Is this what you wanted?" Because he wasn't alone. Ryan stepped out from the shadows of the hallway, his arms crossed tightly across his chest, his eyes burning with a cold, controlled fury. "You really couldn't stay away, could you, Ethan? You just had to reopen old wounds." Ethan's jaw locked, his gaze unwavering. "She deserved the truth, Ryan. She deserved to know why I left." "You call that the truth?" Ryan snapped, his voice dangerously low. "You think she needed to hear your sob story after what you did to her? After you broke her heart into a million pieces?" Ethan didn't reply, the weight of his actions pressing down on him. "You promised me, Ethan," Ryan said, his voice laced with betrayal. "You promised me you'd never go near her again, that you'd leave her alone." "I know," Ethan said quietly, the words heavy with regret. Ryan moved closer, his presence looming over Ethan. "You break that promise again, Ethan, and I swear." "Then what, Ryan?" Ethan said, his voice low and challenging. "You'll cut me out of your life? Fine, do it. I've already lost everything that mattered anyway. Losing you would just be another drop in the ocean." Ryan's expression shifted, the anger slowly receding, replaced by something that resembled disappointment. "You think this is love, Ethan? You think you're doing this for her?" "It's obsession, Ethan. Pure and simple obsession. Guilt dressed up as romance." Ethan's voice cracked, a hint of vulnerability creeping into his tone. "Maybe it started that way, Ryan. Maybe it began as guilt. But it's real now. What I feel for her. It's real." "Not to her, Ethan," Ryan said, his voice laced with pity. "Not anymore. You destroyed any chance you had the moment you walked away." Ryan turned and left, slamming the door behind him, leaving Ethan alone with the glittering city lights and his own gnawing self-loathing. Ethan sank down onto the edge of the couch, burying his face in his hands. He whispered, the words barely audible above the hum of the city. "I shouldn't have let her in. I shouldn't have let her get close." The words hung in the air like a confession, a painful acknowledgement of his own culpability. Then, a flashback, a sudden, jarring shift in time. 2 months earlier, Ryan's birthday party. The first time Claire looked at Ethan like he was the only man in the room. A look that had ignited a spark he had desperately tried to extinguish, but had ultimately failed. She'll calm down eventually. In the meantime, like and subscribe before she deletes the channel. The music was loud, the laughter louder, a cacophony of celebration that filled Ryan's penthouse. It was his birthday party, and the city's elite had gathered to toast the young entrepreneur's success. And his best friend, Ethan Cole, was doing what he did best, being the charming center of attention, effortlessly captivating everyone in his orbit. He possessed that disarming smile, that careless confidence, that magnetic pull that made people gravitate towards him, unable to look away. Claire stood near the ornate drink table, pretending to scroll through her phone, but her eyes kept straying towards him, drawn to him like a moth to a flame. Every time he laughed, his head thrown back, his eyes crinkling at the corners, something inside her tightened, a strange, unfamiliar sensation, a mix of annoyance and curiosity she couldn't quite explain, a nagging feeling she couldn't quite shake. "Stop staring, Claire," Ryan said suddenly, stepping silently beside her, his voice laced with amusement. "I'm not," she replied too quickly, her cheeks flushing with heat. He gave her that familiar brotherly look, half amused, half warning. "He's not for you, Claire. Trust me on this one." "Don't even start, Ryan," she raised a brow, her tone dismissive. "I didn't say I was starting anything." "You don't have to," Ryan said, his gaze knowing. "I've seen that look before, Claire. You might think you're hiding it, but you're not. Claire rolled her eyes, exasperated. You're impossible, Ryan. You read way too much into things. Ryan smiled, a knowing glint in his eyes, then got pulled into another conversation, swept away by a group of well-wishers. As soon as he left, Ethan caught her eye from across the room. For a heartbeat, it was like the noise around them vanished. The crowded room faded away, and it was just them, connected by an invisible thread. He tilted his glass in a silent greeting, that small, knowing smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. A smirk that both irritated and intrigued her in equal measure. Claire turned away abruptly, heat rising in her chest. A sudden awareness that was both unsettling and exhilarating. But when she glanced back a moment later, he was already walking towards her, weaving his way through the throng of people, his eyes fixed on her. "Claire Morgan," he said, his voice low enough that she had to lean in slightly to hear him above the music. "You've grown up since the last time I saw you. Last time I saw you, you were still sporting pigtails." "Please don't start, Ethan," she said, taking a sip of her drink, trying to maintain a semblance of composure. "Start what, Claire?" he asked, his eyes dancing with amusement. "Start that thing you do. The smooth talk, the charming smirk, pretending you don't know how devastatingly dangerous you are." He smiled, the expression disarming. "Maybe I don't know, Claire. Maybe I'm completely oblivious to my own charms." She laughed under her breath, shaking her head. "Liar." Ethan studied her for a long moment, his expression suddenly serious. "Ryan told me you've been selling paintings now, trying to make a name for yourself in the art world." "Trying to," she said, her voice tinged with self-deprecation. "Not all of us get million-dollar startups handed to us on a silver platter, Ethan." "True," he said, his gaze unwavering. "Some of us just earn them the hard way. Blood, sweat, and tears, Claire. That's the only way to truly appreciate success." "Hard way," she said, teasing, unable to resist engaging in his game. "By breaking hearts or by charming investors? Or perhaps a little bit of both?" He grinned, unrepentant. "Sometimes both, Claire. Whatever it takes to get the job done." Claire shook her head, amused despite herself. "You're unbelievable, Ethan Cole." "Maybe," he said, his eyes locking with hers. "But you're still standing here talking to me, Claire. So what does that say about you?" She didn't have an answer for that. The silence hanging between them, thick with unspoken possibilities. Someone called Ethan from the other side of the room, one of Ryan's friends, beckoning him over for another round of drinks. He hesitated, his gaze still fixed on her. "You'll be here a while, Claire?" "Maybe," she said, shrugging nonchalantly, though her heart was doing anything but. He nodded once, a silent acknowledgement. "Then I'll find you later, Claire. I have a feeling we have a lot more to talk about." And he did. After the crowd thinned, and the music softened, Claire found herself alone on the balcony, watching the city lights blur in the gentle drizzle, lost in her own thoughts. She didn't hear him approach until his reflection appeared beside hers in the glass, his presence a silent, magnetic pull. "Beautiful night," he said, his voice low and soft. "It's raining," she replied, stating the obvious. "Still beautiful," he countered, his eyes fixed on her. She turned to face him, the cool night air raising goosebumps on her arms. "You should go home, Ethan. You've already made the rounds, charmed all the guests. There's nothing left for you here." He smiled faintly, the expression melancholic. "You sound like your brother, Claire, always looking out for you." "Someone has to," she said, her tone softening slightly. "He thinks you're trouble, Ethan. He thinks you're bad news." He leaned on the railing beside her, his gaze distant. "He's not wrong, Claire. I am trouble." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and for the first time that night, she saw something real behind the easy charm, behind the practiced smile. A flicker of loneliness, a hint of regret, a vulnerability that surprised her. "What happened to you, Ethan?" she asked softly, the question almost a whisper. He glanced at her, his eyes guarded. "What makes you think something did?" What makes you think I haven't always been this way? Because people who act like they don't care usually do, she said, her voice barely audible. The most cynical people are often the ones who have been hurt the most. For a long moment, neither spoke, the silence broken only by the gentle patter of rain and the distant hum of the city. The city lights flickered against the raindrops, creating a shimmering, ethereal effect, and something unspoken passed between them. A connection that was both quiet and dangerous, magnetic and undeniable. Then Ryan's voice cut through the silence from inside, loud and jovial, laughing, calling for another toast. The moment shattered, the fragile connection broken. Ethan straightened, the mask of casual charm slipping back into place. Your brother's looking for you, Claire. I should probably disappear before he finds me out here. Then you better disappear quickly, she said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. He grinned again, softer this time, his eyes lingering on hers. Good night, Claire. I have a feeling this is just the beginning. She didn't say it back, her mind already racing, struggling to reconcile the charming playboy with the glimpse of vulnerability she had just seen. But later that night, lying in bed, she couldn't stop replaying his voice in her head. The way he'd said her name, like it meant something. The way his eyes had held hers. A silent invitation to something she knew she should resist. Days turned into weeks, and Claire tried to put Ethan out of her mind, to dismiss him as a fleeting encounter, a momentary distraction. But the memory of his touch, the sound of his voice, the intensity of his gaze lingered, a persistent echo in her thoughts. And then, out of nowhere, a message, a single unexpected line of text that shattered her carefully constructed indifference. *Eth Cole saw your interview in the paper. The gallery piece looked incredible. She stared at it for a long minute, her heart pounding in her chest, unsure of how to respond. Finally, she typed a single word. *Thanks. *You shouldn't text me, Ethan. *I shouldn't do a lot of things, Claire. Then don't. He didn't reply. Not that night. But 2 days later, she got another message, a subtle invitation, a carefully baited hook. I'm hosting a small event. Claire. Art, music, quiet people. Come if you want to judge my taste. She hesitated, her fingers hovering over the delete button. She knew she should ignore it, that she should erase his number and move on. She knew she should protect herself from the inevitable heartache. She didn't. That Friday, she found herself standing in front of his penthouse elevator, her reflection in the mirrored doors looking as nervous and conflicted as she felt. When the elevator doors slid open, Ethan was there, leaning casually against the doorway, his presence a stark contrast to the polished perfection of his surroundings. No suit, no performance, just a simple gray t-shirt, messy hair, and bare feet, holding a glass of wine like he'd been waiting all evening, his eyes fixed on her. You came, Claire, he said, his voice soft with surprise and something akin to relief. She stepped out of the elevator slowly, her senses on high alert. I'm just here to look at the art, Ethan. Remember? That's all. He smiled, a genuine, unguarded expression that made her heart skip a beat. Then start with this one, Claire. He led her into the expansive living room, the city lights twinkling through the panoramic windows, and gestured towards a single painting hanging on the far wall. A swirl of vibrant reds and muted grays, a chaotic explosion of color and emotion. It was beautiful, alive, and strangely unsettling. What's it called? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. The line you shouldn't cross, Claire. She turned to him, her brow furrowed. You think this is funny, Ethan? You think you can just use art to manipulate me? No, he said, his gaze serious, unwavering. I think it's fate, Claire. I think we were always destined to cross that line, no matter how hard we tried to avoid it. She laughed, a nervous, shaky sound. You're impossible, Ethan. You really are. Maybe, he said, stepping closer, his presence filling the space around her. But you're still here, Claire, and that tells me everything I need to know. There was music playing softly in the background, a low, haunting piano melody, the kind that makes silence feel heavier, that amplifies every unspoken emotion. He poured her a glass of wine, handing it to her carefully, his fingers brushing hers, the brief contact sending a jolt of electricity through her veins. That single touch was enough to shift the air between them, to ignite the spark that had been smoldering beneath the surface for weeks. "Ethan," she warned, her voice low and husky. "Don't. Just don't." He stepped closer still, his gaze intense, his eyes locked on hers. "You've been in my head since that night, Claire. Since the moment I first saw you on that balcony, watching the rain fall. I haven't been able to think about anything else." "Don't," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Don't do this to me, Ethan. Don't make me regret being here." "Why not, Claire? Because it won't end well? Because we both know this is a disaster waiting to happen?" He looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable, then said quietly, "It already hasn't, Claire." She didn't realize she was trembling until he reached up and brushed a raindrop, or maybe a tear, from her cheek, his touch gentle and tender. "Tell me to stop, Claire," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Tell me to walk away and I will." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her voice caught in her throat, her will paralyzed by a desire she could no longer deny. The world went still, the music faded away, and then she kissed him. A kiss that was both inevitable and reckless. A kiss that shattered every promise, burned every bridge, and still felt undeniably right. When they finally pulled apart, breathless and shaken, she whispered, her voice laced with a mixture of fear and longing, "What are we doing, Ethan? What is this?" "Something we'll regret, Claire," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "Something that could destroy us both. But not tonight, Claire. Just not tonight." She closed her eyes, her heart racing, surrendering to the moment, to the undeniable pull that had drawn them together. For once, she didn't want to think about Ryan or the consequences or the thousand reasons why this would end badly. She just wanted to breathe, to feel, to forget. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, a low, ominous rumble that mirrored the storm brewing within her. The lights of the city blurred through the rain-streaked windows as they stepped into a moment they both knew couldn't last. A fragile bubble of happiness suspended precariously above the abyss. The morning after that night, Claire woke to an empty apartment, the silence amplifying the emptiness in her chest. No note, no message, just the lingering scent of him on the sheets and the echo of his voice in her mind. Her chest tightened, a familiar knot of anxiety forming in the pit of her stomach. She tried to tell herself it was a mistake, that she'd imagined it all, that the previous night had been nothing more than a fleeting fantasy. But every memory screamed otherwise, every touch, every kiss, every whispered word replaying in her mind, a painful reminder of what she had lost. She spent the next week in a daze, functioning on autopilot, trying to numb the pain with work. Calls went unanswered, texts ignored, her phone a constant source of hope and disappointment. Every glance at her phone brought a flicker of anticipation, quickly followed by a wave of crushing disappointment. She buried herself in her work, sketching and painting furiously, letting the colors bleed out the chaos inside her. Each brush stroke a scream she couldn't release aloud, a desperate attempt to exorcise the memories that haunted her. Her friends noticed her distance, her preoccupation, but she brushed off their concerns, offering vague excuses about deadlines and creative blocks. Ryan noticed, too, his brow furrowed with concern, but she deflected every question, every attempt to delve deeper. "You're pushing yourself too hard, Claire," he said one night, pausing at the doorway of her studio, his voice laced with worry. "You need to take a break, get some rest." "I need this, Ryan," she said sharply, not looking up from her canvas, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. "I need to create, to express, to feel something other than this emptiness." "You need him, Claire," he said softly, his words hanging in the air like a heavy weight. "You've been living for someone who doesn't even exist in your life right now." She froze, her hand hovering over the canvas, the brush trembling in her grasp. "Ryan, don't," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Ryan sighed, his expression softening. I'm just saying what's obvious, Claire. You've been different these past few weeks. You're consumed, obsessed, and it's tearing you apart. Claire lowered her brush, swallowing hard, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill over. I don't know how to let go, Ryan. I don't know how to stop feeling this way. Ryan shook his head, his voice laced with pity. You don't have to, Claire. But maybe you can stop letting him control your emotions. Stop letting him dictate your happiness. Weeks passed, the gallery debut looming closer, and she poured herself into every detail, meticulously curating each piece like a map of her pain, her heartbreak, her slow, arduous journey towards healing. The night of the opening arrived, a whirlwind of soft music, muted conversations, and flashing cameras. The soft glow of the spotlights highlighted her work, illuminating the raw emotion etched into every brush stroke. Claire's heart raced as she stepped into the crowded room, wearing a carefully constructed mask of calm she didn't feel, desperately trying to maintain a semblance of composure. And then she saw him, Ethan. He was standing at the back of the room, partially obscured by the crowd, his hands in his pockets, dressed casually but impeccably, his gaze fixed on her, his eyes filled with an intensity that made her knees weak. It was as if he had never left her mind, as if the past 2 months had been nothing more than a fleeting nightmare. Her stomach lurched, a wave of dizziness washing over her. Asterisk, what is he doing here? Asterisk, she whispered to herself, her mind reeling. Before she could think, before she could prepare herself, he was moving towards her, his presence drawing her in like a moth to a flame. His smile was gentle, different from the teasing grin that had haunted her thoughts. It was a smile that spoke of regret, of longing, of a desperate hope for forgiveness. Claire, he said softly, his voice barely audible above the murmur of the crowd. She took a step back, her pulse thundering in her ears. Ethan, you shouldn't be here. This is my night, my moment. You have no right to intrude. I had to see you, Claire, he said, his voice laced with urgency. I had to try. I had to know if there was still a chance. Her breath caught in her throat. Try what, Ethan? Try to break me all over again? Try to inflict more pain? No, Claire, he said quickly, his eyes pleading. To make things right. To apologize for the hurt I caused. To show you that I can be different. She studied him, her gaze searching, trying to discern the truth behind his words, trying to find the charming playboy she had known, the man who had left without explanation. But he wasn't that man anymore. His eyes held honesty, vulnerability, something she hadn't seen before. You left me, Ethan? She said quietly, the words trembling with a mixture of anger and sadness. You walked away without a word, leaving me to pick up the pieces. I know, he admitted, his voice filled with remorse, and I hate myself for it every day. She shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. You can't just show up and expect forgiveness, Ethan. You can't undo the months of silence, the weeks of heartache. I'm not asking for that, Claire, he said softly. I'm asking for a chance to prove I can be different, that I want to be different for you, that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn back your trust. Her breath caught, her heart pounding in her chest. For the first time, she realized how much she had missed him, how much she had wanted him despite everything, despite the pain, despite the betrayal. She turned away, scanning the room, trying to compose herself, trying to regain control of her emotions. Then she faced him again, her expression unreadable. How do I know this isn't another lie, Ethan? How do I know you won't just disappear again? He stepped closer, carefully, not invading her space, but closing the distance between them. You don't, Claire. You'll have to trust me at least a little, and I know that's asking a lot, given my past. Slowly, I'll let you lead. I won't rush anything. I'll earn it, day by day, moment by moment. Her chest tightened, a wave of conflicting emotions washing over her. She wanted to run, to escape the suffocating intensity of the moment. She wanted to collapse in his arms, to surrender to the desire that still burned within her. She wanted to scream at him for leaving, for breaking her heart, for shattering her dreams. She wanted all of it at once. And yet, something inside her whispered that maybe, just maybe, this time could be different, that maybe he had changed, that maybe their love was strong enough to overcome the obstacles that stood in their path. The evening went on, and Claire found herself talking to him, tentatively at first, then with increasing ease. Small conversations about art, the city, fleeting memories, things that felt safe yet intimate. He listened intently, his eyes fixed on her, absorbing every word. He didn't flirt, he didn't tease, he didn't try to charm her. He just listened, offering her his undivided attention, his silent support. Later, as the gallery thinned, and the crowd dispersed, they found themselves alone, standing near the window. The city lights spread out before them like a glittering tapestry. The tension between them pulsed silently, heavy and undeniable, a constant reminder of the past and the uncertain future. "I never wanted to hurt you, Claire," he said finally, his voice breaking slightly, the words laced with genuine remorse. "I ran because I thought it was the only way to protect you, to prevent us from destroying each other. I was wrong. You already destroyed me, Ethan," she whispered, the words filled with a quiet sadness. "Maybe," he admitted, his gaze unwavering. "But I want to rebuild, Claire. I want to piece you back together, even if it's just a piece at a time. I want to spend the rest of my life making it up to you." Her chest tightened, a mixture of hope and trepidation swirling within her. "You expect me to just start over, Ethan? To forget everything that happened? To pretend that the past 2 months never existed?" "No, Claire," he said softly, reaching out and gently taking her hand in his. "I expect nothing, Claire, but a chance. I want you to decide if I'm worth it, if I am worth it. I want you to decide if our love is strong enough to overcome the obstacles that stand in our path." She searched his eyes, and for the first time in months, she saw no lies, no manipulation, just regret, hope, and an overwhelming longing. Slowly, hesitantly, she reached for his hand. Not a rush, not a surrender, but a small bridge, a tentative gesture of reconciliation. He held it gently, almost reverently, his fingers interlacing with hers. "Thank you, Claire," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Outside, the night sky was clear, the stars twinkling like diamonds scattered across a velvet cloth. The city glittered like scattered diamonds below them, and for the first time since he left, Claire allowed herself to breathe, to hope, to believe that maybe, just maybe, a future with Ethan was still possible. "Ethan," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, Claire? Maybe we can start again," she said softly, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Maybe we can try." "Maybe," he repeated, relief and joy breaking through his usual composure. They stood there for a long moment, hands clasped, hearts cautiously reconnecting, the past hanging between them like a fragile thread. Neither promised perfection, neither denied the past, but both felt the fragile stirrings of something real, something that had been tested, torn apart, and was beginning to heal. Claire's phone buzzed with notifications from the gallery, congratulatory messages and sales alerts, but she ignored them. For once, the world outside didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was the man standing before her, the man who had once broken her heart, the man who was now offering her a chance to rebuild. Ethan leaned closer, his voice low and intimate. "I know I've ruined your trust before, Claire, but I'll spend the rest of my life earning it back, if you'll let me. I'll be patient. I'll be honest. I'll be the man you deserve." She let out a shaky laugh, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of amusement and hope. "You better be ready, Ethan Cole. This won't be easy. I'm not the same woman you